All right, let's move on to the team on the ice. They do have medicals today. I'll start with, I guess, the key newcomer, Patrick Marleau. The question a lot of people will have, and Chris, I mean, you've talked about it, and I've heard you talk about it on TV. You've written about it. Other people have as well. I guess the question is, at his age, is he going to be able to keep up with some of his young, fast teammates? And I'll just ask you right now, where do you see him fitting in on the Leafs forward lines? Do you see him and Austin Matthews as a pair, or do you see that Matthews, Hyman, Nylander group staying together? And I don't know, maybe Marleau drops down to, I shouldn't say drops down, maybe Marleau is on a line with Nazem Kadri. How do you see this shaking out? Let me rephrase that. How do you see this starting? First time he takes the ice, who do you think he lines up with?
Tomorrow morning in Niagara Falls, I would expect we'll see him with Nazem Kadri. I mean, if you're the Leafs, they were blessed with a few things last year, but two of them is that they had very well-defined forward lines that had a fair amount of success, a fair amount of health, and to have the Bozak line with Van Riemsdyk and Marner, and to have Matthews, Hyman, and Nylander kind of ready set from last year, I would think you would start with that, and that likely means that you would take Leo Komarov's spot alongside Nazem Kadri. I mean, we know that lines and these sorts of things tend to change throughout the course of a season as injuries dictate or play dictates, but that's a natural place for him to start. I mean, to me, the best attribute that Patrick Marleau brings, perhaps in addition to his experience level and all that he's done in the league, is that he can sort of play anywhere, and he can move around the lineup, I think, pretty seamlessly. He skill skates very well. He's gone 8 seasons since he missed a game with the San Jose Sharks, so he's been a durable player. And, it's a gamble to bring any guy in at that age and to sign him to a 3-year deal with big money, as the Leafs did this season. But, when you look at the body of work with this player and what he can bring to your lineup, I think it's a gamble worth taking. And, I think he'll be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife for Mike Babcock. Will have the potential to kill penalties if they need, can fill in on the power play in a role, and can move around the lineup pretty well. So, that's a real benefit that Patrick Marleau is going to bring the Leafs this season.
And that's kind of one of Mike Babcock's strengths, isn't it? Which, going back to or kind of alluding to his jobs coaching Canadian teams at various levels, is he's used to kind of taking guys who are filling certain roles in certain teams and putting them together with a different line mate and asking him to fill different roles on Team Canada, whether it's at the Olympics or, at the World Championships or whatever it is. And in Patrick Marleau, he's got a guy he knows. So, I would think that would be his strength. I mean, if you want a coach who's going to sit there and look at all these different players and say, okay, I got to come up with a line combination somehow, Mike Babcock's not a bad guy to be doing it.
Well, and in this season, he's blessed with more choice than ever before. I mean, the Leafs have so much depth, in particular on the wings, that really hasn't been the case, obviously, for the last number of years where the organization struggled. And it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves during camp and even into the season as well, because barring injuries, it's likely a few players that are NHL caliber will start the year with the Marlies just because of the numbers game. But, if things happen during the season where the team's struggling or certain players aren't producing, Mike Babcock's going to have more options than ever before to try to juggle things up and find some more productive matchup or lines, rather.
Travis Dermott or Kasperi Kapanen, who do you think is a better shot at making this team?
Travis Dermott, as we're talking right now, which is a bit surprising because, Kasperi Kapanen's got 2 of the bigger goals the Leafs had last season under his belt. Only played on the 4th line when he was up with the Leafs last year, but had a very strong impression in the AHL with the Marlies. But, he's one of those guys I think is really in danger of being squeezed by the numbers. Essentially the way it breaks down, assuming no injuries, and that's a tough assumption. They still have 8 preseason games to play in the next 3 weeks, so a lot of things can happen that will change this view. But, he doesn't require waivers to be sent down to the Marlies. And if the Leafs get through with all the forwards they have this morning being healthy enough to start the year, I would just think in terms of roster and asset management, he's a strong candidate to be sent down to the minors. Whereas I could see Travis Dermott earning his spot. I mean, there's in my eyes, a clear opening on the left side and on the third pairing of the Leafs defense pair. I mean, Martin Marincin, who's been around for a couple seasons now, I guess is maybe penciled in there. You have a couple Swedes the Leafs signed as free agents this summer, and Calle Rosen and Andreas Borgman, who potentially could play for that spot. But I would think that Travis Dermott is maybe not penciled in at this point, but a very strong candidate to fill that role to start the year. And a lot will depend on how he plays. But he's not facing perhaps the same numbers issue as Kasperi Kapanen is as a right shot winger on this team. And I would say if we're handicapping it, that Travis Dermott is the more likely player to start with the Leafs in Winnipeg in a few weeks' time.